To order meeting of the North Carolina Water Resources Commission, July 4th to July 24th, 2025. This meeting is being streamed live for the public to attend and recorded as a public record. Recording of the meeting will be available at www.ncwildlife.gov. And at this time, I'd like to recognize Commissioner Landon Zimmer. Please, my pledge of allegiance.
Please stand if you're ready. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This time, I'd like to recognize Commissioner Tom Haislip to return our invitation.
Let me pray. Heavenly Father, we pause today to thank you for the many blessings of life. As a collective group, we have been blessed with the responsibility of protecting one of your greatest gifts, nature. Our prayer is that we honor you in actions we take and decisions we make. We ask for your guidance as we go about our work and your protection of our officers in the field as they go about theirs. In your most precious name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
This time, I'd like to recognize Margot Minkler to conduct a roll call of commissioners present.
Good morning. Going to do a roll call for commissioners present for our July 24th, 2025 meeting. Bonnie Crump.
Here.
Mark Craig.
Here.
David Hoyle.
Here.
John Coley.
Here.
Les Seegers.
Here.
Tommy Fumble. Tom Berry.
Here.
Brad Standback. Jim Ruffin.
Here.
Ray Clifton.
Here.
Steve Wyndham.
Here.
Landon Zimmer.
Here.
John Stone.
Here.
Hayden Rogers.
Here.
John Alexander.
Here.
Tom Haislip.
Here.
J.C. Cole.
Here.
Mike Alford.
Here.
Joe Budd. Reed Smith.
Here.
Justin Boyd. Mr. Chairman, you have the floor.
Thank you, Margot. And before I proceed, I want to extend another welcome to Justin Boyd, our new wildlife commissioner. He joined us this week for his first meeting. We're glad to have you aboard. He's off to a good start. Welcome aboard. Congratulations. North Carolina General Statute 138A-15 mandates that the commission chair shall remind all commissioners of their duty to avoid conflicts of interest and appearances of conflict under this chapter. And that the chair also requires as to whether there is any known conflict of interest or appearance of conflict with respect to any matters coming before the commission at this time. It is the duty of each commissioner who is aware of such personal conflict of interest or of an appearance of conflict to notify the chairman of the same. At this time, I would ask, are there any recusals?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Due to a potential conflict, I would like to recuse myself from line item E1.
Okay, that's noted and granted. Are there any further notices of recusal from any members of the board? Any business coming for us here today? Here none, we'll move forward. You all have already received the minutes of our meeting of June 5th, 2025. You have an opportunity to read them and review them. Pack prior to the meeting date. Are there any additions or corrections to those minutes? Here none, I ask for a motion and second for adoption of Exhibit A, which are the minute meetings of June 5th, 2025. Motion. Second. Got that? All those in favor of approval of minutes, June 5th, 2025 meeting, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, minutes are adopted. Thank you. This time I'll call on Jason Pottle, Chief Financial Officer, to provide a financial status report. Floor is yours, Jason.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, everyone. We'll begin with Exhibit B, and I'll add the disclaimer that all data being presented this morning is as of May 31 of 2025. In our general fund category, we had total revenues to date of $157,596,100.36. Total expenditures in the same of $164,037,556.64, leaving us with an overall fund balance of $22,301,414.08. And I want to just point out for a second that that fund balance of $22 million is not unrestricted cash available for agency operations. About $3.5 million of that would be unrestricted. The other 19 or so is earmarked either through state legislation, through partners with, through memorandums of agreement with external partners, NGOs. So, you know, that's not 22 million cash on hand. And I point that out because, you know, when we approached the state legislature 2 years ago for additional funding for law enforcement, what we heard time and again was that those requests weren't going to be seriously considered until we had either generated more revenue or spent down our cash balance. And so we've attempted to do both of those this year. Moving on to our capital improvement fund, where total revenues as of 5/31 were $8,702,190.97. Excuse me. Total expenditures in the same were $8,109,773.34, leaving us with a fund balance of May 31st as of $5,281,970.15. Are there any questions about any of that before I move on to our endowment fund?
Other than to thank you for pointing that out about $22 million and make sure.
I just want to add a little context when we see that line item.
Make sure there's a clear understanding of that, because we don't have any more conversations with state.
Yes, sir. No, right. So moving on to our endowment fund, as of May 31st, we had a total investment balance of $215,336,571.33. That asset allocation continues to hover around 85% equities and 15% short-term investments. That seems to be our sweet spot where we've held the last several months. And what we found from that, our current accumulated expendable income is just shy of $80 million. After we factor out our obligations over the next 3 years, we're at about $47.5 million expendable income. We have recently solicited from each of our divisions their wish list for use of endowment funds for the current year. So I'll be meeting with the director's office shortly to review those requests. And then the next time we meet, we'll have a better idea of how much of that $47 million we may need to obligate for priorities in the current year. Again, this data is as of is as of May 31st, but I've since received the June numbers. This upward trajectory has continued, and as of last check, endowment fund balance was right at $225 million. That's a record for us, and I just want to take a moment to reflect on that. That's all I've got if there are no questions.
Definitely reflective of wise money management decisions that Finance Committee recommended, Wildlife Commission has followed through ever since we decided to make this change. Wildlife down from several years ago, it's definitely paid dividends. If I remember right, when we started this, we were around 105, 110 million, somewhere in that neighborhood, 110. I didn't remember exactly the financial guru here did, but obviously we're at 223, 225 million. That's available to put to use for like Samarkand.
Facility construction, land acquisition, whatever it may be.
A tremendous benefit our customers into the state. So it's good to see it.
That money to be used at our discretion for anything?
Yes, basically, yes.
Any other questions or comments? That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Move on to committee reports. And I'll give the executive committee report. Executive committee met yesterday, adjourned in closed session. After opening meeting to review executive director's 2024 performance evaluation, general statute 143-318-186. Returning to session, the meeting adjourned. We had a very good meeting. Kyle gave us an update on when he was hired. He had expectations of what we expected, wanted to see the job. Speaking forward on those, doing it in the near future, particularly in terms of the readoption strategic plan. Look at the good thorough discussion. Viewpoint of executive committee. Kyle was off to a good start. Obviously, he's got a good foundation. One thing that came out in the committee meeting was he knows where every nuts and bolts organization is. He puts it to good use. He's put good staff folks in place. Continue the momentum and the discussion. Continue. Took a look at the side. Very satisfied. Questions or comments about it? Hearing none, voting safety committee report, J.C. Cole.
It would wait coordinator work committee group of permanent rulemaking notice text for Cardwell, David County's next Bill Casola, our policy analyst, presented proposed permanent rulemaking notice text for Cava, Iredell, Lincoln, and Met. These were all these consideration that it's later this. Year being before the business.
Chair, are there any questions, comments, voting safety report? Here none, Chairman John Stone, Fisheries Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ben Rich discussed how restoration of striped bass and noose of our rivers has not been successful since the harvest moratorium was implemented in 2019. Staff recommended a limited striped bass harvest season for both the Neuse and Tar rivers by continuing to investigate reasons for limited natural reproduction. Scott Loftus discussed how well the Kings Bridge floodplain restoration project along the French Broad River functioned during Hurricane Helene flooding. Project illustrated the need for additional floodplain restoration efforts throughout the mountain region. Kesley Roberts introduced the Reservoir Striped Bass and Bodie Bass Fisheries Management Plan, which includes focal areas of fish management, habitat, angler opinions, and research opportunities. The plan will be reviewed by the committee and presented to the commission for final adoption. Christopher Smith then discussed the excellent largemouth bass fishing opportunities in northeast North Carolina and how regional and national bass fishing trails are targeting these fisheries due to their quality. Corey Oakley announced that the flounder harvest season will be September 1st through 14th with a daily creel limit of 1 fish per day, a minimum size limit of 15 inches, which is consistent with the season set by the NC Division of Marine Fisheries. With no additional topics, the meeting is adjourned. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions related to the Fisheries Committee report? Here none, we'll move forward to Habitat Non-Game Endangered Species, and Commissioners, Landon Zimmerman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Habitat Non-Game Endangered Species Committee met on July 23rd, 2025. Dr. Sarah Schweitzer started the meeting by providing a presentation of the 30-day public review of the Eastern Black Rail Conservation Plan. Of the 25 responses received, 13 were in support of the plan and 12 provided no comment. The committee endorsed the plan, which will be presented for consideration in Exhibit L later during this meeting. Van Stansel followed with a summary of barrier removal projects. In 2021, the NC legislature appropriated $7.2 million to the agency for dam removals in Western North Carolina with a deadline of June 30th, 2025 to expend the funds. With help from partners, staff prioritized 9 dam removal projects, of which 2 have been removed and others are scheduled. Next, Shannon Deaton provided an update on the draft 2025 North Carolina Wildlife Action Plan. 10-year revision is due to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service by September 30th, 2025. After a 30-day comment period, the agency received 16 online comments and 12 detailed written comments with overwhelming support of the updated plan. Last, Christian Waters presented a draft resolution in support of the Wildlife Action Plan. And Mr. Chair, on behalf of the Habitat Non-Game and Endangered Species Committee, I recommend the commission approve the resolution by acclamation.
Okay, are there any objections to approving the Wildlife Management Action Plan by acclamation as we discussed yesterday? Here no objection. It's approved by acclamation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That concludes my report.
Any further comments or questions? Reference Habitat Non-Game Endangered Species Committee. Here none, at this time I recognize Chairman Tom Berry, Land Acquisition Property.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Land Acquisition Property Committee met at 1:15 on July 23rd, 2025. The committee began by reviewing public comments on proposed archery zone in the southward tract of the Green Swamp Game Land. All public comments were in support of the proposed archery zone. The committee also reviewed and approved 7 Phase 1 land acquisition proposals, 6 Phase 2 land acquisition proposals, and 3 other property matters. The committee reviewed just over 10,000 acres, and I'll add that it came to us mostly in bargain sales. It's really a historic meeting of land projects benefiting, the committee reviewed just over 10,000 land projects benefiting native brook trout populations, nesting terrestrial species. In addition to resource conservation, many of these properties will unlock expanded public access to previously inaccessible portions of land. I'll add too that we did a little horse trading with the town of Salisbury to help assure the drinking water for the public. The committee adjourned at 2:15. That concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Any comments or questions reference the land acquisition project committee report? We none will move forward to committee of the whole. Committee of whole met yesterday afternoon. The meeting began with Deputy Director Brian McCray providing an update on U.S. Forest Service Helene Recovery Good Neighbor Agreement. Next, Commissioner Jim Ruffin gave an update on the Quill Restoration Working Group. Following that, policy analyst Will Casola presented three notice text 1B 02595 Haynes Branch Game Land 10H 1100 for borough propagation 10G 0.0400 Wildlife Services Agents Readoption. Executive Director Kyle Briggs interviewed and proposed revisions to the 2025 commission meeting schedule. Committee concluded with a conversation about the upcoming election of officers we'll deal with here at the end of this meeting agenda. You know, the highlight of this committee meeting the whole yesterday was clearly this presentation by Brian McCray about an exciting opportunity for the Wildlife Commission to partner with U.S. Forest Service with $250 to $300 million worth of funds. They've been used for habitat restoration and really a wide scope of things. It's a historical opportunity. It looks like it's planned to be put in place over the next 10 years. You know, I'm fully confident our staff has got the ability to implement this. With certainly appreciate their work bringing it this far and looking forward. I know all the commissioners look forward to seeing how this progresses over the next several years. What it'll mean to habitat restoration and opportunities. Very excited. At this time, we'll move forward with our agency spotlight. I'll call on Corey Oakley, who's our speaker. I don't think she needs much of an introduction, but Corey, if you want to get started.
Yeah, as you said, probably doesn't need a whole lot of introduction, but Rachel Hook is our speaker today. She's been working with us since 2013. She started at our Conservation Aquaculture Center and led that for about 10 years and led it very well, and then joined us here in Raleigh and part of our management team as assistant chief of our aquatic wildlife diversity program. And today she's going to talk about all the good work that her staff are doing.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for the introduction, Corey. And it's my pleasure to be here today to talk about what 20 years of conserving North Carolina's aquatic species of greatest conservation need looks like. And before I do, I just want to say it is really an honor to be able to highlight the work that has spanned numerous careers, numerous partnerships, and people. And these faces right here are the faces of our aquatic wildlife diversity team, who are the boots on the ground that are doing this work every day. And I just get the immense honor to stand up here and celebrate all the work that they've done over this 20 years. So how this is going to work, we're going to go through 4 species, 1 snail, 2 mussels, and 1 fish in 15 minutes. And we're going to look at 20 years of conservation. And I want to orient you to this timeline on the bottom. So this is timely because most of these species were prioritized in the first iteration of our Wildlife Action Plan, which was finalized in 2005. And so in this, we look at the knowledge gaps. And so these first bits down here of the life history research, survey and monitoring, genetics, this is kind of filling in the knowledge gaps of these species as identified in our Wildlife Action Plan. We look at the habitats and the threats to these things. And then we want to apply some sort of applied management to achieve our recovery goals for these species. And with any kind of plan, we want to evaluate our actions and see if we're meeting our goals. So let me introduce you to our most charismatic species, the magnificent ramshorn. This is a species that was actually described through genetics in like 2003, where we realized that it was a unique species. It's endemic to North Carolina and the Cape Fear Basin, and it's been lost over time because of threats to its water quality and habitat. In fact, survey and monitoring showed us that the last known population was found in 2004, and it was moved solely into captivity. So we prioritized this species, and when we figured out it was a good species, it's a valid species, we had to do this life history and habitat assessments. So we start looking at, you know, what are its life history requirements? Well, it turns out it doesn't like salt. It's a hermaphroditic species, and we learned how to propagate this in captivity between 2004 to basically 2012. We learned how to propagate it, and we do immense surveys, and it's gone from the landscape, and we have to find suitable habitat. So we work with our partners and with our land and water access Division to look for opportunities to restore the species to the landscape through habitat modifications in 2018. And that looks like resloping a pond, using our aquatic plant nursery to provide the vegetation and then to creating an environment that's suitable for the species. So that happens in 2018. And we're getting ready to reintroduce this species, but then it gets proposed for federal listing. And we understand that we don't want to pass on any regulatory burden to our constituents and the landowners of the state by these actions that we take in the commission. And so we end up creating this permit called a programmatic safe harbor agreement and candidate conservation agreement with assurances for over 21 aquatic species in the state. And this is a landmark agreement. It's the first of its kind with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And the way that these work is that you can maintain a zero baseline and do certain conservation actions, and those things, you can maintain a baseline to for these species. And in this case, the conservation action is a reintroduction and the baseline is 0. And so by doing this, we're able to actually restore the species to the landscape and include people like our landowners into these agreements. We get this completed in 2022. And the Magnificent Ram's Horn gets listed in August of 2023. We enroll this property that we've been managing and making suitable for the species. And then it's the first one enrolled into our agreement. And so here at the bottom, we've got our SHA in place in 2022, and now we can reintroduce this species back onto the landscape. The goal for this species is to prevent extinction and to restore it to its historical range. And almost 20 years later, we're able to put over 3,000 animals back into the wild through partnerships. And of course, this evaluation piece, right? Like, how is this going? Well, the stock snails are surviving at least annually. They're producing eggs. Those eggs are hatching into juveniles. And so the next steps for us are to continue this work, to find reintroductions, to enroll more properties, and to find additional ponds for reintroduction. And so if the goal was to prevent extinction, when we look at 20 years of this species, it still is around, and we've actually been able to put it back on the landscape through this partnership and these resources. Our next invertebrate, by the way, I like invertebrates. So the Tar River spiny mussel was listed in 1985. This is also an endemic to North Carolina. This is its range map, and the red is basically, the dark red is where you can still find it today. It's only known from 2 streams left, Little Fishing Creek and Sandy Creek in the Tar, and this is incredibly rare. It's a North Carolina native. It's the only place you can find it, and we only find 1 to 2 individuals a year. In fact, over the last 20 years, we've probably only ever found 40 to 50 individuals total of this species. So it's prioritized. We do survey and monitoring of this in the early 2000s. And we're seeing this decline of the species over time. So the first step is to augment it. It's still present on the landscape, but it's in immense decline. And so we learn how to propagate this with our partners at NC State. We increase our own conservation aquaculture center capacities. And we take those 40 to 50 individuals and we turn it into 40,000 animals that are augmented onto the landscape across 17 sites. Again, when you're talking about 40 to 50 animals, we're talking about preventing extinction for this species is the goal, and creating self-sustaining populations. So we're able to do this in 2014. We will want to evaluate it. And hats off to Dr. Heather Evans and her lab, because we use immense genetic tools to evaluate our efforts on these successes or these conservation goals. We can look at the population structure. We can actually look at percent hatchery contribution in these augmented populations through parent-based tagging. We can see if the host fish, which mussels need, are actually having these juveniles recruit to the right hosts. And now we have an eDNA marker where we can go and sample across the landscape to help us find these species and individuals that may be under detection. And so evaluating this, we build these tools in 2024. We do this routine monitoring. And what does this look like for the species? Well, animals that we produced in 2010 and stocked in 2014 are still present in our augmentation sites 10 years later. And if you remember that 40 to 50 number at these augmentation sites, we're getting like 19 mussels per hour. Remember, we only found 40 to 50 total over 20 years. And these animals are sticking around for 10 years. They're becoming gravid. And this past year, I even got to get out of my office and go in the field. And this past year and the year before, we actually found the first wild recruited Tar River spiny mussel up there in the top left corner of a wild recruitment. This is tremendous success for this species. All the threats have not been completely eliminated. You know, we still need to understand what is happening to the habitat and why we're seeing these range reductions, but we can use this new tool like the Safe Harbor to make additional populations on the landscape through reintroduction. And this is really showing tremendous success. On to another invertebrate, Appalachian elktoe. This is a freshwater mussel in Western North Carolina, and this was listed in 1994. This species is known from Eastern Tennessee and Western North Carolina, and it's really restricted into the French Broad and the Little Tennessee River basins. You can kind of see its range map down there. And again, prioritized by our agency in 2004, 2005. We do a lot of life history. We look at survey and monitoring. And you know, survey and monitoring is working. When we look at this population, it's doing well across its range. We actually are seeing expansions of the population. We're seeing a little bit of a range shift actually, where it's moving up higher into the cooler waters, and we're seeing it kind of retract in the warmer waters and lower ends. And that might be climate driven and temperature driven, but we're seeing it's stable and it's expanding, especially in the French Broad. So just kind of burn this map into your head. And we did have a hurricane come through in 2004, and it heavily impacted the Little Tennessee. We also had a wastewater treatment failure in the Cane River and the Nolichucky subbasin. And so we know we need to augment some populations and reintroduce some populations to create 1 or 2 additional populations to recover the species. So we build up propagation techniques early in 2009. We look at our genetics of those sources and we augment these, and we stock over 40,000 animals onto the landscape. But it's not working. Something isn't working. Where we stock these animals, they're not persisting, they're not growing, they're not recruiting. And so there's this piece that we're missing. We still kind of need to figure out, and it might be a habitat component. But in general, in the Little Tennessee, we find additional new populations in Burningtown Creek, and we realize that this species could be restricted by its overall, you know, movement upstream and habitat. And so we work with, you know, Shandean Habitat Conservation Division so that we can do this applied habitat work to remove things like the Dillsboro Dam removal. Shannon gave a great presentation yesterday about our dam removals, and a lot of that work is still supporting this species to this day to help make sure that there isn't anything impeding its upstream movement. So we feel like it's doing pretty good. We just got to find a few more locations until September of 2024. And this is the rainfall map. And I said, remember, burn that image into your head. It is the range map as well for the Appalachian elktoe. And so we'd see unprecedented rains, especially in our strongest populations in the Nolichucky subbasin. And now we're gonna have to kind of take a step back and reevaluate what is happening. But the good news is that it highlights all of the importance of this work that we've done over 20 years to build these resources to be able to create redundancy on the landscape and to kickstart what's going to be needed for this species. Just to give you an idea, this is the site on the Cane River before and after. The red circle is where we stock species. This is what it looks like. These areas are significantly impacted, especially in the Nolichucky subbasin. This picture on the left was the best known site. It was heavily riparian buffer, old trees. There was a house there. This is what that site looks like now. It was our best population. So our staff are out surveying, highlighting what needs to happen next on our timeline. We need to look at survey and monitoring. We need to figure out where these species are on the landscape. Right now, there was, you know, this population in this picture had over 400, 500 individuals estimated in the population. Staff have only found 1 individual in their surveys after the hurricane. We have unknowns in the upper French Broad and the Little River, another strong population. There's ongoing work, in-stream work that's impacting this species. The populations, then the stars there are the pigeon and the Tuckasegee, and those seem to be stable, but there's also some in-stream work that may be impacting them. So the good news though, is that we know what we need to do. We've built the tools to be able to do this work. So we got to redo some things, survey and monitoring, we can propagate and augment, and then reintroduction and habitat work. And most importantly is we had animals in the hatchery when the hurricane hit from the Nolichucky subbasin. There was redundancy built into this so that if that entire population is dramatically impacted, there are propagated animals waiting to be released back into the wild. We're going to end on a fish. Everyone likes fish. So Roanoke log perch. This was listed in 1985 as endangered. It was really thought to only exist in Virginia. And then in 2007, it's found in North Carolina. So we do immense life history. We work with partners. We find out that actually it's in 40 river miles of streams in North Carolina. And it's doing pretty well where it is. And the biggest, impediment, of this species, thank you, that's it, what he said. So the biggest barrier to this species moving forward is a barrier, and it's restricting its ability to move upstream. And so we work with the town of Madison. This is a huge collaborative project to lower this and restore access to all of this high quality habitat for the species. And that's in 2018. We also know that there's some dams like the Avalon Dam that is not going to come out. So we work with our partners in Knoxville at Conservation Fisheries, and they help us learn how to propagate this species in 2019. And we do our first augmentations in 2020 to bolster existing populations. And then because we have our safe harbor, we're able to reintroduce this species into this blue huck right here. This is the Upper Mayo River, and this area had not had the species present in over 100 years. So we're creating this goal of creating redundant populations, of meeting the recovery goals of increased representation on the landscape. And this Lindsay Bridge Dam is right here, and this gets lowered. And again, Dr. Heather Evans and her team help us with eDNA. We start sampling, and we actually get the first hits of Roanoke log perch up in this Upper Dan section up here, restoring it to 20 plus river miles of high quality habitat. And all this work was done because of the recommendations that we lay out in our wildlife action plan through our partnership building. I mean, we have municipalities, we have other state agencies, we have river basin associations, we have conservation fisheries helping us to achieve the conservation goals for this species across its range. And what does that lead to? It leads to the proposed delisting of this species in April of 2024. And as of this Tuesday, the final rule posted, and it is delisted as of Tuesday, meeting the success criteria and recovery criteria for the Roanoke log perch. There is still work to be done. We still need to monitor this species over the next 5 years and make sure that it's stable, but now it also truly becomes a state trust resource. So in summary, can we move the needle for conservation? These things were kind of in hospice. Some of the goals were to prevent extinction, where they'd been completely extirpated from the landscape. They were down to 40 individuals, right? Well, our recommendations that we give to ourselves in the Wildlife Action Plan and to our partners is to do the surveys, to monitor the species, to do the research, fill in the knowledge gaps, and to do these applied management actions and create these conservation programs and partnerships with others to help us achieve this work. And now that we have tools like the Safe Harbor, we can partner with people like private landowners to help us achieve this work. And I would say that looking back over 20 years for things like Tar River spiny mussel, Roanoke log perch, magnificent ram's horn, darn it if we can't pull that needle down and make a difference for these species through focused efforts, building partnerships. This return on investment could take 20 plus years. But it's something that is worth doing, and I think we can actually make a difference. And this is done with tremendous numbers of partnerships and funding opportunities, a diverse array of stakeholders that help us achieve this work. And with that, I will take any questions.
Go ahead, Lynn.
That was a great presentation. It's nice to see, success stories, especially a lot of people don't get to work and see the fruits of their labor. So that's pretty awesome. I was going to ask, I guess the eDNA, the environmental DNA testing, I guess you guys don't do that. You do that for mussels or for the spiny?
Yes. Yeah.
But you're trying to find individuals. Is that why it's not as effective, I guess?
So freshwater, well, we can use the eDNA to help us kind of hone in our surveys. When you're looking for a needle in a haystack, you know, the eDNA and the water sampling can kind of help us get a positive hit. And then we can go back and do focus surveys in those areas to try to detect those individuals. And it's actually very helpful for mussels because they burrow into the substrate, and sometimes that means it's hard to visually detect them through traditional surveys. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Yeah.
John?
Yes, sir.
I've seen pictures of track hose, in the French Broad River and in other waterways where I guess it's the Corps of Engineers cleaning out debris.
Or contractors.
So it just dawned on me, that can't be too good for the Elk Cove and these guys. Have you documented any damage from that?
There has been documented damage, especially in the Little River, which is why I had the question mark. So there is evidence that when a track hoe is run in a river, that it's crushing the rocks, and staff have found crushed mussels.
Other questions? You know, Rachel, thank you I think you picked 4 good examples. Really good presentation. Thank you for your work. Appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Moving forward, on Executive Director Howard Briggs to go over a proposed change to 2025 Wildlife Commission meeting schedule.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. In Exhibit C, you will see a proposed request to move what was currently the October 2nd commission meeting to Thursday, October 16th due to conflicts. Staff recommends making that change.
I entertain a motion second to make this adjustment to the 25 Wildlife Commission schedule at this time.
So moved.
Commissioner Berry, second, Commissioner Alexander. You got a motion on the floor to move the meeting, change it to amend this 2025 meeting schedule. As just noted, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carried. Please note the change in the October meeting. This time we'll move forward on the agenda. Land acquisitions, property matter. This time I recognize Brett Solomon, Assistant Chief of Land Acquisitions, to present several phase 2s. We'll take the first 5 in order, vote on those, and then we'll separate one out as requested yesterday, which is the Shell Island reallocation, which is D6. So if you go ahead and go with the first 5, D1 through D5.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll begin with Exhibit D1. Exhibit D1 is the Dennis Creek Tract. It is a 623 acre property in Watauga and Caldwell counties. It will be in addition to Buffalo Cove game land. Exhibit D2 is the Buffalo Creek Tract. It is 1,260 acres in Watauga and Caldwell counties, and it will be in addition to Buffalo Cove game land as well. Exhibit D3 is the Cadell Black Cove Tract. It is a donation from TNC. It's 185 acre property in Richmond County, and it will be in addition to Sand Hills game land. The Loblolly Group LLC tract is another donation from the Nature Conservancy. It is a 325 acre property, and it will be in addition to Nicholson Creek game land. Exhibit D5 is the Great Dismal Swamp Restoration Bank property. It is 2,300 acres. It will be in addition to North River game land. This too is a donation from the Nature Conservancy. Staff and the Land Acquisition Property Committee recommend approval of exhibits D1 through D5.
We discussed these at length yesterday and reviewed them. Are there any questions about them before I ask for a motion in a second? Hearing none at this time, I'll entertain a motion in second for the adoption of exhibits D1, D2, D3, D4, D5 as presented. Motion, Commissioner Ruff, so I have a second. Commissioner Hall. Are there any further questions, deliberation, comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of the adoption of D1 through D5. Motion on the floor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed. Motion carried. This time, go ahead. I'm sorry. Got to make a presentation first.
We'll proceed with Exhibit D6. It is a reallocation from NC Department of Administration to the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission. It is a 128 acre Island in Carteret County. Staff and the Land Acquisition and Property Committee recommend approval of Exhibit D6.
Again, this was thoroughly vetted and reviewed yesterday. Asked to pull it off for a single vote. At this time, I'll entertain a motion second for the adoption, consideration adoption of D6.
So moved.
A motion second from,
Second.
who's the second? You got it? You got it? It's got a motion and a second on the floor to adopt exhibit D6, Shark Island reallocation. Or any further discussions, consideration, comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed? No. Motion carries.
We'll proceed to our other property matters. We'll first start with Exhibit E1, and we'll take this one forward by itself. This is a easement request for a permanent right-of-way and temporary construction easement from NCDOT. Staff and the Land Acquisition and Property Committee recommend approval of Exhibit E1.
Again, this was thoroughly discussed and vetted yesterday in committee. We do have a recusal that will note for the record, Commissioner Mandy Zimmer. All that being said, at this time I'll entertain a motion. Second, E1. Go move. Linda, who seconded? Second, all offered. Any further discussion, deliberation? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion to approve exhibit E1 as presented, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Proceed with Exhibit E2 and E3. Exhibit E2 is a storage building demolition at Armstrong Fish Hatchery in McDowell County. Exhibit E3 is a property trade with the city of Salisbury for a proposed water intake facility. The commission would trade 15.83 acres of commission-owned game land adjacent to the Yadkin for 19.64 acres of land owned by the city of Salisbury. It has much greater public access and hunting and trapping opportunities. The exhibit E3 will move. We recommend approval of exhibit E3 with the contingency that we only move forward with it once we receive approval from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Staff and the Land Acquisition and Property Committee recommend approval of exhibit E2 and E3.
Both of those were, as noted, reviewed yesterday, and obviously, to do this, to note E3 is presented, not completely based on concurrence with U.S. Fish and Wildlife. So at this time, I'll introduce a motion. Accept the motion in a second for exhibit adoption of exhibits E2 and E3 as presented.
So moved.
Commissioner Berry, second. Any further comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of the adoption of exhibits E2 and E3 is presented, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Thank you very much,
Thank you, sir.
Ben. Appreciate it. And at this time, we recognize Bessie Hayward, our water safety rulemaking coordinator. We have two notice, review fiscal notice and notice of text Davidson County.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. With your permission, I'd like to present two requests for publishing notice of text for the city of Hickory and for Davidson County and the fiscal notes, and then ask for a vote at the end of that. First, we have 15A NCAC 10F 0338 for the city of Hickory. This was discussed in the Boating Safety Committee meeting yesterday, July 23rd. Staff recommends commission approval to publish notice of text with an open comment period and public hearing for an amendment that was requested by the city of Hickory to enlarge the no-wake zone on Lake Hickory shore to shore from south of the US Highway 321 bridge northward past the Riverwalk and the Lake Hickory Pub and Marina to a point 460 yards northeast of that bridge. And the request is to mitigate hazards to boater safety at the bridge, the Riverwalk, and Lake Hickory Pub and Marina. In exhibit step F2, staff will also recommend commission approval of two fiscal notes in Caldwell County, the city of Hickory, no wake zone amendment, and for the Adam Klutz Bridge on Lake Hickory in Caldwell County. Next, we have 15A NCAC 10F 0324 Davidson County. This was discussed yesterday in the Boating Safety Committee meeting. Staff recommends commission approval to publish notice of text with an open comment period and public hearing for several amendments to the Davidson County rule on High Rock Lake, Baden Lake, Tuckertown Reservoir, and the Yadkin River to enlarge the no-wake zone shore to shore in the cove on High Rock Lake where the Skipjack Marina is located, and to extend that no-wake zone south to a point 50 yards south of the dock at the Raven Point Boy Scout Camp. And this request is to mitigate hazards to boater and water recreation safety at the marina and at the Boy Scout Camp dock. Staff also recommends removal from the NCAC, a no-wake zone in a cove on High Rock Lake at the High Rock Lake Shores Drive after a determination by enforcement that the no-wake zone is not necessary to mitigate boater safety hazards in that cove. Staff also recommends noticing text to incorporate into the North Carolina Administrative Code the addresses and bodies of water for public docks, marinas, boating access areas, swim areas, and bridges and trestles that are maintained by the Wildlife Resources Commission, Davidson County, and Cube Hydro Carolinas respectively. Also in Exhibit G2, staff recommends commission approval of the fiscal note for Davidson County.
Okay, are there any questions, comments from Betsy's presentation? Hearing none, at this time, I'll entertain a motion to second for the adoption of exhibits F1, F2, G1, and G2 is presented. Motion and a second. See that? Alexander and Cliff. Are there any comments, deliberation, discussion, further? If not, all those in favor of adoption, motion and second for F1, F2, G1, G2, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries.
Thank you.
This time I'll recognize Will Sola, rulemaking notice of text, Alba, Iredale, Lincoln, Mecklenburg County. And just go through your whole Payne branch game, your whole entire presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. I have one additional boating safety item and then 3 general rulemaking notices. Our boating safety item is notice of text for permanent amendments to 10F0307, Catawba, Iredell, Lincoln, Mecklenburg counties, Exhibit H1 and H2 in your package. As discussed yesterday, the proposed amendments codify vessel livery standard requirements on Lake Norman, and staff recommend publishing notice of text with an open comment period and public hearing.
Yeah, let's go ahead and take this before you move on, okay? And at this time, I'll ask for a motion to second the adoption exhibits H1 and H2 as he just presented. Move. Okay. Wyndham and Alford. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion adopt exhibits H1 and H2 signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carried. Okay, Will.
Our first of our 3 remaining rulemaking items is notice of text for proposed adoption of 10D0295 Paynes Branch Gameland in Forsyth and Stokes County, Exhibit I1 and I2 in your package. As discussed yesterday, the proposed rule will establish Paynes Branch Gameland, set deer season regulations, and prohibit horseback riding and target shooting. Next, we have the proposed amendments to 10H1100 fur bearer propagation rules, Exhibit J1 and J2 in your package. As discussed yesterday, the proposed amendments update rule language for improved clarity. They update caging requirements based on industry standards. They update biosecurity and human safety standards. They clarify reporting requirements, and they set requirements for license holders working with rabies species. And last, we have the readoption of 10G0400 wildlife service agents with substantive changes, Exhibit K1 and K2 in your agenda package. As discussed yesterday, the proposed amendments update rule language for improved clarity and conciseness, and they update the terms and conditions for wildlife service agents. These rules are required to be readopted by December 31st of this year. Staff recommend publishing notice of text with an open comment period and public hearing.
Okay. Any comments or questions on Will's presentation on these text doc? If not, I'll entertain a motion and second the adoption of exhibits I1, I2, J1, J2, K1, K2. So moved. Barry, second. Brother. Any further discussion, deliberation? Hearing none, all those in favor of adoption of these exhibits noted, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. Thank you very much, Will. This time I'll recognize Sarah Schweitzer. In our species conservation plan for black rail
Yeah, thank you all. I want to bring your attention to Exhibit L, the conservation plan for the Eastern Black Rail. We discussed the response from the 30-day public comment period yesterday during the Hinges Committee meeting. All the comments were in support, and today we are just the staff recommends approval of this conservation plan.
Okay. Are there any comments or questions? Again, here again, we went over this plan yesterday. Are there any comments or questions, Sarah? Excuse me. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to second adoption. Exhibit L, Black Rail Conservation Plan is presented.
So moved.
Second. Wait a minute, we got Zimmer, who seconded the floor? Four. All those in favor of the motion to adopt Exhibit L, please signify by saying aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Thanks, Sarah. Move forward on the agenda pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143, 243, first scheduled meeting. Commission at July 1st of each odd numbered year, the Wildlife Resources Commission shall elect from among its membership, chairman and vice chairman, who shall serve for terms of 2 years or until their successors are elected and qualified. Yesterday, at the committee as a whole, we opened up the floor for nominations for both positions, vice chairman and chairman. Floor was open for nominations taken, nomination closed, and from the committee as a whole, 2 nominations been brought forward today for consideration and final vote. And this time I'll move forward with a vote for vice chair, and I'll open the floor for, and from the committee as a whole, the name that came forward after the nomination closed was Landon Zimmer. And at this time, I'll open the floor for motion and second to elect Landon Zimmer vice chair.
So moved.
Second. Motion from Wyndham, who seconded? Everybody. We'll get going. Are there any further questions? Hearing none, all those in favor of the election of Landon Zimmer as vice chair of the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Congratulations, Landon.
Thank you.
And at this time, we'll open the floor. The committee of the whole brought forward a nomination for chairman, Mark Craig. And at this time, accept the motion and second for the election of Mark Craig as chairman of North Carolina Wildlife Resources. So who? Tom, who seconded the side? That's right, second. So I have a motion and a second to elect Mark Craig as chairman of North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Carries. Congratulations, both of them. Thank you. Glad to have you. You got any words you want to say? We'll start with you, Landon.
Look forward to working with everybody and thank you all. Thank you.
Art.
I'm thankful that Landon said yes, and I obviously can't do it any better than Monty or any quicker than Monty, so we'll try to his legacy. We still have plenty of work moving forward. I'll be in contact with all of y'all over the next couple of weeks on committee assignments and help. But thank you.
Very good. Very wise decision where the commission's being transferred into great hands, chairman and vice chair without a doubt. Everybody at this table is qualified for the position. I appreciate all the support of y'all giving me over the years, our staff. We've had a good team. We've got great staff, great commission. I urge you to continue that same level of support to Mark. And I certainly, again, gratitude, thanks to all. Not getting off that easy. Exactly, but I am appreciative of the opportunity. We've got a graduation of our next law enforcement. Is it 61st one? Sir, is that correct? The 61st graduation of our law enforcement training academy. Our next line of officers to take, I would say, the streets, but to take the woods and the outdoors. Next Friday, August 1st at 11 o'clock, Jackson Springs. You all have those directions. And I would encourage, if you haven't been, to absolutely make an attempt to come. This comes on the heel of the grand opening last month, Sam McCann, which again is a great legacy to this commission. That's wonderful service and rededication. Also, officers memorial. So it was a moving event. Still to pay dividends for years. Also want to give our condolences to Tom Myers. His father was keeping prayers. Certainly. Be remembered all of us. With that being said, I have no other business other than to transfer the gavel to Chairman. And at this time, I'll call on our executive comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I want to congratulate our new incoming chairman and vice chairman. Thank y'all so much for being willing to serve and congratulate all the commissioners that just got reappointed and the new commissioners. Commissioner Boyd, looking forward to working with you. And of course, thank all the commissioners for all the guidance and phone calls. None more so than outgoing Chairman Crump. Can't tell you how much it means to me for all the phone calls and advice you've given me. I know former executive Cam Ingram would say the exact same thing. Certainly gonna miss you in that role, but glad you're not going anywhere. And then I do want to also wish well Danny Ray, former wildlife biologist in District 8, who's going through the final stages of cancer right now, unfortunately. And wish him and his family the best as that transition happens. And then, of course, thank staff for all the hard work. You know, we talked about this good neighbor agreement and how transformative that is. And I certainly want to especially thank Brian Craig for all they've done. The amount of work that it's taken to put together a 10-year budget, line item by line item, is pretty amazing. And they've done good work on that. And if you didn't get an invite for the graduation, please let me or Margot know. I don't know. I want to make sure everybody got that. If not, like I said, please let one of us make sure you get all the details. With that concludes my remarks.
Are there any further business or comments? This time? Yes, sir.
Money. As a commissioner, I'd like to say a sincere thank you for your time as chairman. You have led us through some pretty rocky times. Our finances are better. Our staff is second to none. Your long-term commitment and dedication to the minute detail has set a standard for our incoming chairman and our incoming vice chairman. They're gonna have to go up the ladder a little bit. What you've done is just second to none. And personally, I just want to tell you thank you for a job very well done.
We're a team.
Thank you all very much. In keeping with tradition, before we gavel us out, we won't call it a party gift because you're not going anywhere. You'll join 4 other previous chairmen that still serve on the committee, which is invaluable to us. It's something that's unusual that we have that many committee chairs still participating, still adding valuable content. We have a party gift in hopes of transforming you into a bow hunter and adding 6 weeks on to your deer season. We have a nice famous crossover with it today, so that hopefully you get it here as well.
You very much. Appreciate it. Very much. Oh, wow. Thank you very much.
About long as you don't hurt yourself.
Did you get anything with it?
No, I didn't get anything.
Getting anything? What's going on here?
Oh, Lord, this is very meaningful and I appreciate it all, really do. Heartfelt. Thank you very much.
They gavel us out.
Thank you very much for adjourned.